Thankful to have you with us this day. As has been mentioned, our number is smaller than normal. We have many people who are visiting at various locations and traveling, and we certainly pray for their safe travels and well-being. But it's certainly a good sight to see you with us this day. Of course, this is what we refer to as Memorial Day weekend, and certainly we remember those people, as Jim mentioned already, who gave the ultimate sacrifice to procure our freedom. Freedom exercise still this morning to worship the great God of heaven without any fear of outside forces hindering our ability to do that. And certainly we remember those people who gave that sacrifice. And as always, we are thankful in remembering the great sacrifice given by Jesus Christ to purchase our salvation and establish His church. A quick review of the sermons I have preached revealed that several sermons have been devoted to the broad area of the misuse of the tongue. And certainly that is appropriate because James said, "And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, and it defileth the whole course of nature, and is set on fire of hell." Most, if not all, recognize the danger of letting our tongue run wild, as it were. And it is indeed still the meanest member of the church. But this morning I want to direct your attention to the fact that there are times when we all need for our tongues to be loosed and to speak plainly. In the last 7 verses of Mark chapter 7, a deaf man is brought to Jesus, if you remember. Now the man, of course, not only deaf, but as you can imagine, this man also had a great impediment in his speech. And they begged Jesus to put his hand unto him and to heal this particular man. And Mark 7:33 and 34 records that Jesus took him aside from the multitude and put his fingers into his ears, and he spit and touched his tongue. And looking up to heaven, he sighed and said unto him, "Ephphatha," that is, be opened. Now, verse 35 records these words. "And straightway his ears were opened, and the string of his tongue was loosed, and he spake plain." We know without any doubt the very first word the deaf man heard. Ephphatha, be opened. We have no record of the first words spoken by this formerly deaf and mute individual. I wonder what he must have said. After all of these years, for the great master to touch you and to operate in such a manner that your ears are now opened and now you have the ability to speak and to speak very plainly, I wonder what it was he said. No matter what it was plainly said. We do know that, don't we? You know, friends, there is such a great need in our world for the children of the great God of heaven to have the strings of our tongue loosed and for us to speak plain. That is exactly what the Jews called upon our Lord to do. In John 10, verse 24, "Then came the Jews round about him, and said unto him, How long dost thou make us to doubt? If thou be the Christ," now listen, "if thou be the Christ, tell us plainly." To the Corinthians, Paul said, "Seeing then that we have such great hope, we use great plainness of speech." The second epistle to the Corinthians, chapter 3, verse 12. Friend, if we are to please God, if we are ever going to allow the beauty of Jesus to be seen in us, we must loose the strings of our tongue and speak plain. We must not make excuses for our silence. There are many areas in which we must speak plain. When it comes to the singularity of the church, my dear friends, we need to have our tongues loosed and to speak plain about the one church purchased with the blood of Jesus. We need to speak plain in regards to what are the conditions of one's salvation. Friend, we need to speak plain. We must also speak plain about sin and the grave eternal consequences of sin. I want to begin this morning for the next several weeks on the Lord's Day morning, Lord wills, to bring to our attention some areas in which we all need to have our tongues loosed and to speak plain about. And our topic this morning is worldliness. Worldliness. Worldliness is one of the greatest dangers that face God's people today. Elders, preachers, Bible school teachers, parents, every individual Christian, we all need to stand on top of the walls of Zion and cry out as loud as we can about the great dangers of worldliness. What is worldliness? Well, Brother Guy in Woods defines worldliness as a sphere or cosmos of evil, an order which is opposed to God, and whose pursuit those who abandon God have dedicated themselves. It is the case, friend, that it is often the case that as we talk about worldliness, we too narrowly define it. And we can get so narrow in talking about worldliness that it's no wonder that people everywhere are not convicted of the dangers of being world-like. That's exactly what worldliness is. It is to be world-like. It is world-likeness. It is a wedge that sin drives into the heart of the Christian. And that wedge divides God's will and own selfish interest of the person. That's exactly what that wedge does. We become so worldly that selfish worldly interests take the place of God in our hearts. And worldliness, therefore, is simply sin. Would you not agree with me that worldliness is rampant everywhere? You know, seems to me like as I grew up, my sister was 4 years younger than I. She was here last Sunday morning. But I remember in her room a plaque that read, "Sugar and spice, everything nice." You know, that's what little girls are made of, supposedly. Sugar and spice and everything nice. I guess that plaque on many people's walls has been replaced by belly button rings and tight-fitting jeans. Today, 1 in 2 teenage girls are at the mall and they're wearing their favorite pair of what I refer to as, I wear a size 8, but the 6s are so tight, I went ahead and got the size 4s pair of jeans. And you remember, if you look at the mall and walk through the mall very far, you'll also find a new tattoo just right above the caboose. Worldliness. Young men are also victims of worldliness. They walk around today with their underwear hanging out all over the place. Earrings put in every conceivable location. And if it's not an earring, there's a tattoo placed there. And my dear friend, I'm sad to say that that kind of behavior is making its way into the church. Preachers and elders and teachers and parents firmly need to address that type of behavior. We need to go back to a time when parents, and I especially mean fathers, need to exercise the authority and the discipline that our Father bestowed upon us. That's what we need. I heard a wise man say one time, if your children are dressed for success in Satan's cause, it is your fault. We need mothers to teach their children the great value about purity, the great value of honor. As Christians, as the children of God, we are supposed to be setting our affections on things above, not on things of the earth, Colossians 3 verse 2. And there are simply too many of us who have our affections in the wrong place. Instead of having our affections on things above, we are too focused on being just like the world and being accepted by everybody around us. And my dear friend, it is shameful when members of the Lord's church cannot be distinguished from the world because of the immodest apparel they wear. We are called out of this world. In Romans chapter 12, verse 2, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you can prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of Christ. And we're supposed to be different. You know what happens though? Many, many people, instead of being separate from the world, they spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars dressing their teenage girl in the skimpiest dress they can find and send them off with a hormone-raging young man for a wild night of dancing and partying and reveling. And then we all come to church and we sit there and we sing, take time to be holy. We sing pure in heart. My friend, those two things don't match. It's worldliness. We're supposed to be different. And my friend, let me tell you as plain as I possibly can this morning, if you don't want to be different, you can't be a faithful child of God. We got to be different. We don't do everything that the world does just because they're doing it. We're called upon to be different. One of the very first things Jesus told us was, let our light so shine before the men that everybody could see our good works. And if they can see our good works, they can do what? They can glorify the Father which is in heaven. It's a problem. And my friend, too many of us have sat far too long on church pews and have remained silent. You need to have your tongue loosed. Speak plain. When I talk about speak plain, I don't mean to be hard-hearted. I don't mean to berate people. I mean to speak the truth in love. You know what to speak the truth of love really means? A love for God. A love for people. You know, there are other areas of worldliness that we have to battle. You know, there are so many people in this world who have been utterly consumed by a love of money. In 1 Timothy chapter 6 at verse 10, Paul said, the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. Did you notice that the love of money is a root of all kind of evil? Lying, cheating, deception, taking advantage of people. You just think about all the different problems that arise because when an individual has this overwhelming love of money, a love of riches. But I want you to notice, it is the love of money. It is the letting money be your guide, letting money be your first priority. That's the problem. Friend, money is not the problem. It is the love of money. Now, how often has a love of money driven a wedge into the hearts of men? How many times has that wedge driven to the heart of a man ended up separating that person from God? In Luke chapter 12, getting to verse 15. And he said unto them, take heed and beware of covetousness. For a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of things which he possesseth. Now he continues, the Lord, and he spake a parable to them, saying, the ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. And he said, or thought within himself, saying, what shall I do? Because I have no room where to bestow my fruits. And he said, this will I do. I'll pull down my barns and build greater. And there will I bestow all my fruits and all my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. Have you ever heard anybody say, well, you just preaching that man right to hell? Man, I don't preach people to hell, but I tell you one thing, this man in this story, he is preaching himself to hell. Did you catch it? This man right here, the Lord is describing, he is preaching himself straight to hell. But God said unto him, thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then who shall those things be which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Friend, we have a problem when things become too important for us. We have a problem. You know, I can name numerous examples of people that I have witnessed as a pursuit of world riches took those people further and further and further away from God. We're just trying to provide their life for our children. We just want our children to have it better than what we've had, and so we're willing to forsake any assembly. If we can work and make more money, we just want to do it because we're just doing the best we can for our children. No, you're not. No. That's not best for your children. They might have more spending money. They might have more gadgets, might have more entertainment. Let me tell you something, friend. It's not best for your child or your children. To be led astray in the pursuit of worldliness and world riches and neglect and forsake God, and people drift further and further away from God. And friend, often is the case that good Christian people just sit by and do and say nothing. We must not allow things to become too important for us. If there's anything in your life that is more important than God, it better be removed. Whether it be a TV, a wash machine, or a riding lawnmower, a fishing rod, a shotgun, whatever it is, it better be replaced. It better be removed because God's first place in our lives. See, that's what Paul was talking about. It's not money. Money is not the issue. What could we do if we were the richest people in town and all assembled this morning at the Lord's church? What could we accomplish for the cause of Christ? It'd be a great blessing, would it not? See, it's not money, it's the love of money. It's the putting money ahead of God, making it first priority. Our number one pursuit in life is to acquire more and more, and we get just like the world. We get just like the world, and the whole time Satan is driving that wedge further and further and further into our hearts, dividing us and God. There is another area, and I think it's worth mentioning, and that is what I refer to as running with the world. Do you know of people who just want to run with the world? In the second epistle again to Corinthians, chapter 6 this time, and 14th verse, Paul says, "Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion doth light with darkness?" Now, done on your screen, I'm going to continue in verse 15. "What concord hath Christ with Belial? Or what part he that believeth with the infidel? And what agreement hath the temple of God with idols? For ye are the temple of God. As God has said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I'll be their God, they shall be my people. Wherefore, come ye out from among them, and be ye separate, thus saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I'll receive you, and will be a father unto you, and ye shall be my sons and daughters, saith the Lord Almighty." Now, friend, Paul uses an example for us in this particular reading. This example is very familiar to these people. These people knew that the two animals being yoked together had to be compatible. I find it interesting that the Mosaic law expressly forbid the mixing of a mixed team of animals together. The 22nd chapter of Deuteronomy, verse 10, "Thou shalt not plow with an ox and an ass together." Expressly forbidden. You don't need to put two different kinds of animals and yoke those animals together and plow with them. Now, Paul uses this example to teach. He is teaching the Corinthians of the need for their being matched up with others of like precious faith. If a believer is bound to an unbeliever, the unbeliever will influence the believer for bad. Each person would be pressured to go against their basic desires, and so it just don't work, Paul says. Paul's instruction forbid us to be involved with wicked people in the activities that make those people wicked. Now, there are many cases in which a Christian must have daily, continuing association with unbelievers. Paul is not forbidding a business or casual contact with unbelievers. What Paul is questioning is, who is in the lead in this relationship? We must never involve ourselves in a relationship in which we allow unbelievers to be the lead. Now, young people, if you're going to marry an unbeliever, you better make sure that you're going to be in the lead. You better ensure that you will not allow the unbeliever to drag you down, but you're going to be in the lead in that relationship. It's all boiled down to a question of who is going to be in the lead. Am I going to allow myself into situations in which I must somehow support and uphold the wicked in their wickedness? God forbid. Then we better make careful observations in regards to the people that we surround ourselves with. And if there is an area in which the church struggles, it has to be this concept of fellowship. You know, Christian people, when they come together as the Lord's body, there is supposed to be great happiness and joy and great fellowship expressed. My friend, how in the world could we ever seek to save the soul of somebody who has wandered off into sin by withdrawing our fellowship if we don't have the type of fellowship God expects to us in the first place? It's supposed to hurt when that fellowship is withdrawn, and we are the family of God. And that's why it's important when we have opportunities to fellowship that whatever has to be done is done so that everybody can come together. That's why I don't think it's a big deal when I stand up and say, please, since my wife has a tree nut allergy, please don't bring tree nuts to the fellowship meal, because I don't want to miss fellowship and she don't want to miss fellowship, right? It's not about, well, you know, I've always brought a pecan pie and I love pecan pies. Who cares? I like fried chicken. But if it's going to make you sick, I won't have none that day. Right? Because fellowship is important. And when we surround ourselves with brothers and sisters in Christ, and we come together and we work in harmony and unity, and we have the great fellowship that we're supposed to have, then I don't have to worry about all those people in the world. I've got the family of God. Isn't that what's supposed to happen? You know, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for Christian people. I remember one time, and I'm going to hush in a minute, I don't want to drift too far away. Here we are, we're in Memphis, Tennessee, actually Collierville. Mason is about 3 years old, and Abby's about a year and a half, or close to a year and a half old. And Myra hurts her ankle, and she can't walk. She barely can get around, and I've got to go to school. I'm going to leave Myra and 2 small kids at the house. We don't know anybody around us. We're in an apartment complex, families hundreds of miles away. What we're going to do, you know what happened? You know what happened. What Christian people do. Those Christian sisters whose husband went to school with me, they came to our house. And they took care of the kids and Myra while I was going to school. You know, that's what we do as Christians. See, we don't have to have the world. We have Christians. We have family. And when I moved to this community, you became my family. That's what's supposed to happen. That's what happened. And see, what fellowship would I enjoy with the world? What could I accomplish with the world? I can't allow the world to take the place of the family of God. I've got to put my priorities right. I've got to have this great fellowship we talk about here. If somewhere along this little speech you've understood fellowship as eating and eating only, you're sadly mistaken. Fellowship is a lot more than a fellowship meal in some building. That's part of fellowship, but that's not really what fellowship is. And I don't know. I would love to know the first person who called it the fellowship meal. But anyway, we're just supposed to love each other and do what's best for each other and put each other first. Not the world. I don't want to surround myself with all these worldly people that might drag me down. I want to be with the family of God. Now, friends, we need to speak plainly. We must not allow those people who have been led astray by those who are not faithful to God to remain in that condition while we sit back and say and do nothing. You know, there are some things in our society that's happening that Christian people need to have our tongues loosed and to speak plainly about what side we're on. I might discuss those next Lord's Day morning with the Lord's will. Shouldn't we warn those that we love about danger? And my friend, when we see people becoming worldly minded, we need to sound off a warning to those people. We need to preach, need to teach and exhort people not to be like the world, but be separate, be distinct, peculiar. Now, can you think about times that you were aware of some worldly minded individual, befriended, and then eventually led away a believer? Can you think about those situations? I'm sad to say I can. That's why there's a great need today for Christian people to have their tongues loose and to speak plainly. As I mentioned a moment ago, not in some holier-than-thou condescending manner, but rather in love. A love for God, a love for the truth, and a love for people. And my friend, no matter what I do, if I don't have my tongue loose and speak plainly to those I love, I can never display the beauty of Jesus. I just can't do it. I hope you have enough faith and resolve and courage to do that. Let's don't sit by while this world rushes off into hell. Let's sound the warning. Let's have our tongues loose and to speak plainly about the great love God has for us and about the need to come out in the world and be separate and distinct and peculiar. That's what we need to be doing. The invitation is yours. My friend, this morning, if you're not a Christian, you need to understand salvation and what's required of you. Nothing has changed in all these years since the church was established. Repentance is essential. A confession that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the great Messiah, is essential, and so too is baptism. The like figure whereunto even baptism doth also now save us. 1 Peter 3, verse 21. And if you've been baptized to become a child of God, and you realize along the journey of life that you've erred off the path, that you're not what you're supposed to be, my friend, if it's of a public nature, then make that confession publicly. We'll pray with you and for you. If it's private, do that privately. And let us all resolve this morning that starting right now, we're all going to have our tongues loose and we're going to speak plainly about God and God's truths. That's what this world needs. That's what this community needs, and that's what each individual family needs. It's the only way, friend. There is no other way. And so I ask you this morning, as you examine yourself, if there's any need in your life, we would rejoice to assist you. If you would simply let that request be known, as together we stand to sing.